Mr. Rutherford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to follow up on that, Mr. Eden, that is exactly what concerns me when law enforcement collaborates with school boards to not enforce the law. And so, Sheriff Carter, I would ask you, who makes arrest decisions in Shenandoah County?
I don't know if I understand. Who makes arrest decisions?
But
The
whether
officer.
to make an arrest or not
Right.
that's a decision for law enforcement, correct?
Yes, sir. It's the law enforcement officer.
And if you have a law enforcement agency that has given away their decision-making, because look, I can tell you, it happened in Jacksonville, Florida. They wanted civil citations to be written for public affray. Those are violent events. And they didn't want them reported, and they didn't want arrests made in those cases. And so you have violent behavior that escapes the view of law enforcement, and that's what concerns me about these relationships. And particularly in this case, it appears that even law enforcement outside of the school had a situation where it was reported to them that this individual, Nicholas Cruz, had actually pointed a gun at somebody's head, threatened to kill them. That's aggravated assault. That's a felony. Now, the comment was made that the police did not arrest because the victim didn't want to prosecute. But I can tell you in the state of Florida, the victim agreeance to prosecution is not a requirement for an arrest.
Correct.
And I assume it's probably not in Shenandoah County either.
Sure.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So in these cases, you know, which is exactly why we passed all of these domestic violence laws, so that we no longer put it on the victim to have to come forward because of the relationship that they had with their abuser. And so we made those laws to take it out of the hands of those domestic violence victims. And I think here we have put arrest into the hands of those who have a reason not to want those numbers of arrests within their schools. And so I see a real problem with that. But, you know, I also, Ms. Harper, I was, the reason we drafted the Stop School Violence Act of 2018, working with the Sandy Hook Promise Group, was because, as I often told my agency and my community, I didn't want to be the best first responder to a mass casualty event. I want to prevent it before it occurs. And so I was very glad to see in your writings here, you talk specifically about you know, focusing on those individuals in finding their behavior and what's going on at these schools. You talked about, you know, we need to look at the negative school climate, the lack of school connectedness, involvement in bullying, perpetration, and victimization, association with social peers, low school performance. I agree with you 100%. We need to teach our students, teachers, and officers what to look for in these individuals who have a propensity to become, you know, these mass casualty shooters down the road. And I also will tell you that we expanded that bill to also include toughening the target, because you mentioned that as well. Not only do you want to look at the prevention issues as far as the building, but also focus on the individual. And you say that, you know, you think we can do both. And I would agree with you. In fact, I would say not only we can do both, we must do both. And so I appreciate those comments. But I just want to make the point that in this case, and I told the FBI deputy director earlier that, you know, I see personnel decisions in this case at the local, state, and federal level. The Broward County Sheriff's Office. You know, nobody's even talking about the Parkland Police Department. I want to know what they did with the tip that they got, because the lady that made the tip to the FBI said she gave it to them as well. What did they do with it? And so there were so many personnel decisions throughout this that were wrong. But I thank you for being here today and sharing your testimony.
Time of the gentleman has expired.